in your opinion and your belief, how important is psychology, that component, that mental component in trading?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, man. There's two sides of the coin here, man. And I'm gonna play devil's advocate because there's a growing world of traders who don't believe in psychology at all, and don't believe, but they don't. And again, it's how human beings circle around definitions, right? We'll always circle around definitions because somebody has a different definition than you do of what it means to them, right? And then you sit in an argument with these people, and then you realize at the end of the argument that you're talking about the same thing, you just word it differently. You know what I mean? So, so to the point about psychology, right? When I think about the psychology of trading, I think number one, two different things, right? There's market psychology, right? And then there's my own personal sort of beliefs, behaviors, and psychology in and of itself, my own emotions and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's extremely important, number one, to understand market psychology. Now, the second one is up for debate, right? Because if somebody creates a system of trading that has rules for everything, right? That has rules for when to add, when to exit, when to get in, what indicators to use, how many do you want to use, how many have to be right before you take the trade, and blah, blah, blah. And you have an actual system, right? Where you have your risk defined and literally everything to the T, right? And you've done this over a period of time of years to create the data for it as well. One could say that there is no psychology to this, right? One could say that the psychology has been taken out of this equation. Now, here's where it gets messy, right? If you look at the trading stats, would you find some human error in there? Would you find mistakes? Would you find where a human being said to himself, okay, the system says add more here, or the system says exit here. Did I actually do that? And then you could look at the percentage of times that they did that and made that error. Then could you really say that psychology is not a freaking part of this? If 50% of the time you made a freaking error on your system and you didn't stick to the rules of your system, now could you really say that there is no psychology in this game? Could you really make that argument? I don't think you can. Now, if you tell me, my bad to cut you off, if you tell me that you have this system, you stick to it, maybe it's all automated, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. Maybe you've taken that sort of behavioral psychology and your own emotions sort of out of the equation, which is amazing. That doesn't mean you got a profitable strategy. At the same time, it's just down to the code. It's down to the code at that point, right? So I'm playing devil's advocate here, man. For me personally, I think it's one of the most. I think it's the only important thing because I I only know myself, right? And I can only speak for myself. Now, in speaking for myself, you find that you're very similar to a lot of other people. I'm a pretty emotional guy, so to speak. So what's going on in my life always has an effect on my P&L, right? How I feel has an effect on my P&L. So immediately I'll sit there and talk about psychology all day because if I don't feel good and it makes me, hesitate, or it makes me trade with fear, or it makes me whatever, then psychology plays a distinct factor in my performance, and nobody can tell me otherwise. How to control those things is a whole nother science, right? I mean, people have written books and people pay trading coaches thousands of dollars a month to figure this shit out. So as I said before, for most retail traders, your edge is up here because you're trading the same shit as the next guy, and your ability to make money is solely based on the fact that you got more of your noodles up here, you know. So that is how I would answer that question. And again, it's 2022, man. You can't just say black and white shit anymore. You know what I mean? Shit has layers to it. Everything has layers to it.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer. I certainly appreciate the complexity and the layers that go into it, and I think you're right. There is a fair point to be made about the whether you consider psychology something that you want to attach to a code, a piece of code, an algorithm. I think there's also a fair argument to be made about maybe that coding has actually just hard coded the psychology into it until we get to the point where AI is just coding itself, right? Where
Yes, exactly.
and maybe
Which
maybe
which
that's
we might get to that
2023.
point. Which we might get to that point, and
Yeah,
and then you could have the argument of, do we even have a market anymore?
right.
So when we go back to market psychology, man, do you think any of this exists without emotions?
Right.
Does any of this price instability exist without emotions? I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible at all. I don't think it's possible to see the prices on equities moving the way they are without emotions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we'll always overreach. Maybe some valuation is, they'll say on CNBC all the time, like, this is properly valued. This stock is properly valued. We've discounted all these future cash flows. You go to the fundamental models and you start to figure out what each share price should be worth depending on earnings of whatever company, and and all that kind of stuff. And then you go ahead and say, okay, this stock is properly valued. Now every day there's emotions involved, which cause that balance to go up and down like crazy, depending on factors that we're either scared about or we feel good about, right?
Right.
So we feel good about the economy, so screw it. Go to the moon, man. Go to the moon. Everything to the moon. Who gives a shit? If we feel fearful about something, we'll take a Peloton down to negative money, man. We'll take a Peloton down to negative money, after being completely infatuated with it and buying bikes for everybody in our families.
Right.
And then we'll say, nah, man, it's completely,
Right.
it's completely gone. It's completely useless. Even though they're still selling bikes, they still got IP. They still got, whatever the hell they have. But our perception of it is, screw this thing, man. This shit's useless.